In 1996, Konami created a new division under their name called Team Silent, composed of employees who had previously failed or were otherwise deemed non-essential at other projects being funded by the company. It was a team of people who came and went as time went on, even at one point being split in half to work on 2 games at once. Only a few people stayed with the team throughout its existence, those being Masahiro Ito, Hiroyuki Iwaku, and of course, Akira Yamaoka. While Iwaku and Ito both deserve a large amount of credit for how the first 4 games ultimately turned out, today I want to focus on Yamaoka's work not only as a composer and musician for the series, but as the person who created the most important aspects of the franchise's sound. If there's a sound in any of the first 4 games that has stuck with you since you first played it, it's very likely that he was the one behind it. Silent Hill 2, the most popular game in the franchise by far, has an amazing soundtrack created by Yamaoka. He perfectly blends alternative, grunge, ambient, trip-hop, and industrial to create some of the best video game music the genre has ever seen, and likely ever will. For fans of the survival horror genre, especially from the PS2 era, his music is instantly recognizable. It can stand on its own 2 feet, separated from the games without any issue, and many people who have listened to it have never even played the games the songs were made for. What a majority of people don't realize is that he was also behind nearly every sound you hear in the Team Silent games, from footsteps to gunshots. There are hundreds upon hundreds of different sounds in the game files, all crafted for their own areas, enemies, and situations. Some of these sounds have a random chance of occurring in different areas of the game, be it footsteps, breathing, distant screams, metal grinding, or even crashing down to the ground. No 2 runs of this game are quite the same. Yamaoka's dedication to the sound design and atmosphere of Silent Hill 2 is immeasurable. In a 2002 interview, he stated the following when asked about recording different footstep sounds for the game. Yes, it's true. As you know, also in regards to the creation of the sound effects, just like the music, I wanted to differentiate it from that which you hear in other software. I wanted it to sound more natural and more realistic than ever. Although it was a video game, I wanted to make it so that you would feel as if you were watching a movie of high interactivity. That goal was not limited to the music only, so I spent a lot of time in the sound creation of footsteps and other sound effects as well. Given that most games have plenty of different sounds for footsteps nowadays, this may not seem like a very special thing to you, and that's totally fair. However, this was 2001. Time where a lot of games only had a few different sounds for footsteps and almost never took into account what surface those steps were on. Silent Hill 2, on the other hand, had over 200. If you've played the game enough, you can certainly start to spot some of the same sound clips at times, but it's definitely not as noticeable as it is when it's the same 2 sounds for each and every step. Akira put a huge amount of work into the small details like this, which is why I think it's important to highlight his work as a sound designer in addition to his musical contributions. Yamaoka's attention to detail didn't stop there. He was far more involved in the development of the game than the average soundtrack composer, and therefore had far more control over the feeling, suspense, and atmosphere of the game itself. In 2015, Yamaoka stated the following about his feelings on the topic. "If it's all me, if everything you hear is me, then you have total control over the mood and the tone. Games at the time almost never had moments of silence, and I wanted to experiment and mess around with dynamics. I wanted it to be unpredictable. Maybe during a big scare I cut everything out, and maybe if nothing was happening at all, there would be a lot of sound. He makes a great point in this quote. Video games at the time usually followed a pretty predictable pattern. Loud sounds for scary moments, and quiet background music at all times during exploration and normal gameplay. I think a great example of the way Yamaoka strays away from this is in the Woodside Apartments, specifically in room 208. Initially, you enter the room and are met with this. After the short cutscene, you regain control, allowing you to leave as soon as you'd like. Most people would want to get out of there as quickly as possible, but the thing is, nothing actually comes to attack you afterwards. An industrial, deep and impactful sound plays on a loop in this room for as long as you're inside it, but not a single enemy comes to sneak up behind you as you take in the sights. On the other side of this spectrum, you can refer to the boss fight with Eddie. In the original game, it's not exactly a super thrilling fight either way, but rather than using loud, booming music in the background, Yamaoka opted to drop the music entirely, with the only noises being the droning sound of the meat cooler you're fighting in and the attacks connecting with the other person.
I'll kill you, James!
That may not be the most frightening or even entertaining fight in the game, but I do think it's a good example of how Yamaoka preferred to stray away from otherwise predictable patterns when it came to the game's sound. My next focus is Brookhaven Hospital, an area packed full of creepy, randomized sounds. A bit after you arrive, Maria decides she's not feeling well and lies down in one of the cells on the 3rd floor.
James. Wait a minute. I'm kinda tired. It's just a hangover.
You should rest.
So comfy.
After this, you're on your own. You work through the game normally, dodging or killing various enemies in the halls of the hospital while hearing the odd sound of something that you can't quite place. After a short rooftop cutscene, you transition into the other world and have to navigate through the whole area again. Everything you expect is present here, including all of the enemies. Eventually, you'll make it back to the 3rd floor. It's not a requirement at all, but if you do happen to go into that 3rd floor room Maria is resting in again, you'll notice that she's no longer there. Only a tabletop full of pill bottles and muffled breathing that sounds like it's coming from inside the walls. This is never elaborated on in any in-game way, but it's my personal opinion that Maria is still there in the real world, just not visible here. The game can be a bit vague at times on what's actually considered the other world, especially in comparison to the first game, so don't take my thoughts on it as anything official. her breathing being muffled is something I won't theorize on right now, since I don't want to get into super important territory, especially now that the remake is out. Next, I want to talk about an area much later on in the game, Toluca Prison, where Yamaoka's sound design becomes even more unsettling. There are moments of great sound design all over the prison, but there are two that I want to focus on. As James navigates the dark, claustrophobic cells, one of the most notable encounters is the low-pitched, pretty much indecipherable voice that echoes out from one of the cells. The technical choice to use this muffled, distorted voice amplifies the feeling of the space, adding to the immersive atmosphere without relying on visual cues alone. I'm not sure if this is a well-known fact about this area, as I've only seen one other person mention it online, but you can actually shoot and kill whatever it is that's in this cell. If you shoot it enough, it falls down to the ground, with a scream that I personally have never heard outside of this area. Once you've progressed enough in the prison, you'll make your way to the Gallows. This is a massive, unlit room with a single structure right in the middle of it. Once you complete the puzzle, you're met with the sound of screaming, but that's not what I want to focus on. What I'm more interested in calls back to Akira's use of silence and noise. As soon as you enter the Gallows, you hear things moving around, most notably horses galloping around the room. Despite this, the horses are nowhere to be found, because there was never anything there. Pretty often in this game, you'll enter a room and are met with one or more enemies, so as soon as you step foot into here, you're on edge. As a first-time player, you can't be too sure that you're by yourself, and that tension does wear off on your second or even third run. But if you've never experienced this area before, you'd probably feel like you could get attacked at any second. Again, just like with room 208 in the Woodside Apartments, you can stay in here for as long as you want. The galloping fades in and out along with a few other sounds, never stopping until you leave. I'm sure that at some point I'll be coming back to this topic, maybe to compare the sound design of the original to that of the remake. Since I've gone over areas that I feel already have the most interesting sound design, here are a few smaller ones that I thought were cool, but not significant enough to have an entire section on.
James!
Overall, when it comes to subverting expectations, nobody did it like Yamaoka back in the late 90s and early 2000s. This quote is from 1999, but it's still true for a good portion of Silent Hill 2. There is no background music in Silent Hill. I tried to depict the sounds that would be heard in the world of Silent Hill if it existed, using the art of conveying sound through air vibrations. The stereotypical sounds that are often described as game music do not apply to Silent Hill at all. I also avoided trying to make cinematic music as I felt it would sound too intentional. Because of the almost complete lack of background music in normal gameplay, it's very easy to hear the other sounds that may be drowned out by it in other games, like footsteps. Since there's nothing to stop you from hearing them here though, they become much more noticeable. Whether you're walking down the Woodside Apartments hallways, or down Sanders Street to get to Neely's bar. I'm going to be playing through the remake for the next few days, and I'll almost definitely have a few more videos on Silent Hill in general following that. I want to thank everyone that has subscribed to my channel so far, as we just passed 100 subscribers at the time of me posting this. I do a lot of work outside of this, so it's really nice to see that people are actually paying attention to what I post here. I hope the topics I discussed in this video were interesting, and if they were, it would be very helpful if any of you liked the video for me, so more people can see this and know just how special Akira's sound design is, and how important it was for the games. I hope you all have a great day.